When life gets unpredictable, preparation matters. In medicine, it's all about staying alert, ready for whatever comes through the door. On the road, it's no different. That's why Volvo designs vehicles to help anticipate risk, reduce harm, and protect lives. The Volvo XC90's advanced safety systems inspire confident decisions wherever the road takes you. The Volvo XC90, for life. Proud sponsor of the Pit Podcast. Learn more at volvocars.ca/safety.
We're going to be talking about working from home, and many of you now have left the office. You've been working from home since the beginning of the pandemic, and there is a question here. Should employers have a responsibility to protect their employees who are working from home against domestic violence? It's something we have to talk about, and it's our pleasure to welcome Bill Hlibchuk, partner at Norton Fulbright, onto the program. Bill, how you doing?
I'm doing very well, Elias. How are you?
I'm doing good. Let me ask you, how interesting has your job been since the pandemic began, with all of the questions regarding working from home?
That's a good question. So I do 100% employment and labor law, and I represent employers. And I can say that employers have been through the ringer. Obviously, employees have as well. But the questions that we've been having to address, including the one that I think we're going to talk about here, have certainly been very interesting and compelling.
Because I guess the crux of the matter here is that employers have a responsibility to make sure their employees are safe, right? And if they're working in an office, if they're working in a warehouse, well, that's your building. You're on top of things. I guess it gets murkier when that same employee is now working from home. And what if that employee is in a dangerous situation, perhaps involving domestic violence? So what does the law say? How much responsibility does the employer have to bear if you now have an employee working permanently from home?
Well, I can say pretty clearly there's nothing direct on the subject, and I know that people sort of poke fun at lawyers because we always say it depends. But this is a very murky issue because, first of all, yes, employers have an obligation to keep their workplaces safe, and indirectly, obviously, the employees safe from physical risk and from psychological risk. And we know in Quebec that the psychological harassment legislation that came in around 2003 and has been alive and well since then has been set out to protect employees, not just on the physical level, but their psychological integrity. But the idea of this obligation of employers to keep their employees safe, generally speaking, extends to things within their control. And that's where the issue is.
Is it in their control? We're with Bill Hlibchuk, partner at Norton Fulbright, labor lawyer there. So, Bill, I have a friend, and she works at a very big company, multinational big company. And they received an email where they were told of a phrase they could use in Zoom calls with other employees to give their colleagues an indication, I am in trouble, I need help, I'm in a domestic violence situation. Is that, does that basically a good example of things employers should be thinking about? Of course, the employer may not be able to protect every employee from every situation, but if they can give them certain tools to get help, they are fulfilling their role as an employer.
So, firstly, doing that does not fall within an obligation of the employer. If there are employers out there that are choosing to do that sort of thing, obviously that's up to them to decide. But I would say that there are pros and cons with that type of approach. I think generally speaking, you want to put resources available to employees. So resources in terms of employee assistance plans where they can get access to counseling, and they can get access to all of the types of organizations that have professionals that are going to help them. And this is the point that I'm making here, which is, okay, fine. If an employee communicates to their, mid-level manager a code word, or even says directly, I'm having difficulty in the home, well, are managers for private corporations that are making widgets, are they equipped to deal with this sort of thing? And that's the question, because ultimately, there could be a little bit of a Good Samaritan type of situation where there's a moral obligation. Employers want to make sure that their employees are well, and it's normally it's a normal human thing to want to help. But the question becomes, who should be doing the helping and how? And I think that the best advice I could give to employers is to ensure that they're communicating with their employees and making sure that they're providing resources to them, educating them, and letting them know that they can avail themselves of these resources.
So can I ask you, if you had to, if you were consulting with a company and they're like, okay, what should be on our manager's checklist for a thing like this? What would you say the manager should do if they were faced with an employee who's facing that situation, quote unquote, in the workplace now that they're working at home in a tough spot?
Well, this is, I think, a very good question. And the employee assistance program of the company is the first place to want to go.
Gotcha.
And I think that managers should be checking in with their employees, and not just for situations of domestic abuse, but any type of mental, physical health type situation. Obviously, one of the delicate parts of this is privacy rights. Okay. And so managers, good managers will check in and will get that sweet spot of asking questions and being connected with employees while not necessarily invading their privacy. Because while one employee might consider this a welcome intervention by their manager, another one will actually consider it to be a privacy violation and possibly even harassment.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. It's not as cut and dry there, right? Other different employees could handle it in different ways. Do you think, Bill, that labor laws will have to pivot, that we'll have to adjust certain labor laws now with this new reality of more people working from home?
I think that it's definitely something that's probably on the radar of the various legislators. And I'll give you a couple of examples that, like I said, this issue is not directly addressed, but various laws kind of nibble around the edges. And here's an example. So the workplace is, changing. Even before COVID, lots of people were working from home. It's not a new thing. Obviously, a lot of us are doing it now without other options. But employers still have, let's say from a health and safety perspective, an obligation to ensure that the workplace, the physical part of the workplace, is okay. In other words, is the desk all right? Is it ergonomic? Are there risks associated with that particular workplace where the employee can hurt themselves? That's already in existence. Now, whether or not an employer is held to be responsible for something that happens is always going to be a question of fact. Just to give you an example, there was a case that was accepted for workers' compensation where an employee hurt her back while unloading boxes of documents from her workplace to ultimately work within the home. And the CNESST accepted this claim, basically saying her employer was aware of the fact that she had to do this, and it happened while she was working because she was bringing her documents, and it happened basically at the extension of the workplace being her home.
How far does that extension go, you think? And maybe there's another example of that extent. To me, when you give me that example, I'm like, yep, I buy that. You're taking the boxes from work and you're bringing them home. That's still work. How far do you think you could take that?
Well, when it comes to physical type things where, like I say, it's somewhat within the employer's control, that's one thing. But where I think a line is to be drawn is obviously where we get into this issue of domestic abuse.
Yeah.
I don't think employers have a legal obligation to start interrogating an employee about their family life and whether or not your spouse is abusing you. I think that it may come up in conversations, and that's where those resource suggestions come in.
Yeah.
But when you're talking about control, even the simple part of making sure that the physical workplace is safe, well, how do you do that? Do you ring the doorbell and say, I'm going to come in and I'm going to look at your home office, which happens to be in your bedroom,
Yeah.
and I'm going to see if everything's okay because I want to make sure that I'm not held liable for anything? Some employees might say yes, others will say absolutely not. So you have to work around it. You can maybe ask them to send pictures. You can ask them to do a Zoom call and show the camera around the room. But where it comes to issues of serious privacy, which is like, the relationship between two spouses, that obviously is a huge issue. And then the other one is if a manager does, let's say, get that code word you were talking about or an actual disclosure, and then they go and they feel like they have to do something and they call the police or they call some type of regulatory authority and they say, I think my employee is getting beaten by her husband. Well, what rights does the husband have in terms of defamation? There are a whole lot of pitfalls that can come into that, where somebody who means well may end up causing a little bit more trouble than they anticipated. I'm not saying to do nothing. I think the resources being given to the employees is the way to go, but you could see that it opens up quite a can of worms.
Bill, a really interesting discussion. I think for anyone that's, runs a business there, a lot of stuff to think about. Thanks so much for being on the show.
It's a pleasure.
That's Bill Hlibchuk, partner at Norton Rose Fulbright.